Welcome to The Explainer. You ever wonder why some lessons just click while others are a total snooze fest? Well, today we're going to pull back the curtain on how great learning is actually designed. We're talking about moving from a strict, rigid blueprint to something more like a flexible, creative recipe. Okay, I want you to think for a second. Picture the absolute best training session you've ever been in. You know, the one that actually stuck with you. Now, picture the worst one. Yeah, that one. The one where you were mentally counting the ceiling tiles, just waiting for it to be over. So what's the difference there? Was it just random luck? Or is there something more going on?
Well, the answer is it's not magic. And it's definitely not an accident. The best learning experiences, they're engineered. They're built from a systematic, deliberate plan. You know, a blueprint designed to build up your skills and knowledge piece by piece in a way that actually, works.
And that blueprint, it has a name. It's called Instructional Systems Design, or ISD for short. This is the framework, the system, that the pros use to take a bunch of information and turn it into instruction that's actually clear, measurable, and most importantly, effective. So, okay, what is ISD, really? At its heart, it's all about taking a systems approach. You might hear it called learning experience design or curriculum development. It's all kind of the same idea. And the core principle is simple. You always start with the end goal in mind. The whole point is to be super clear about what people will be able to do after the training and exactly how we're going to know if they've succeeded. Right, so why bother with a system like this? Well, the advantages are pretty huge. For one, it helps designers build stuff quickly and effectively. It also gives you results you can actually see and measure, which is a big deal. Plus, you can create reusable parts. But here's the thing that trips people up. Just because it's a system doesn't mean it's a rigid cage. It's actually the opposite. The more you master it, the more you see how flexible and adaptable it can truly be. Okay, so if ISD is the overall blueprint, what are the actual steps? Let's get into the nuts and bolts. The most classic, the most foundational model out there is called ADDI. Seriously, you can think of it as the original recipe. Almost every other model out there is some kind of variation on this. So ADD is an acronym, right? It stands for the 5 phases. First up is analysis. That's where you figure out what your learners actually need. Then you've got design, where you map out your objectives and your whole strategy. Next is development. That's when you actually build the course materials. Implementation is, when you deliver it to people. And finally, you have evaluation, where you step back and measure if the whole thing even worked. Just about every model you'll see is built on this basic 5-step process. Now look, that classic Addy recipe is fantastic, it's a solid foundation, but let's be real, it's not always the perfect fit for every situation. Things move so fast these days, right? So learning design has had to evolve to be way more flexible. And that brings us to the newer kids on the block. Iterative design. So what's the big difference here? Well, a linear model, like the classic Addy, is often called a waterfall model. You finish one step completely, then you move to the next, then the next, and trying to go back and make a change, it can be a real pain. Iterative design, though, is totally different. It works in these rapid cycles. You design a little bit, you get some feedback, you tweak it, and you do it again and again. It's built for collaboration, and it lets the solution kind of evolve on its own. And this quote right here, it just nails it. It really captures the power of this whole iterative idea. The point isn't to get everything perfect on the very first try. No way. The idea is that the final product, the learning solution, evolves over time through constant teamwork and feedback. And that's what keeps a design responsive and, actually relevant. And there are a bunch of these iterative models out there, each with its own little twist. You've got SAM, which is all about making these small, repeated tweaks to get closer and closer to the perfect product. Then there's Agile. You've probably heard of that. It comes from the software world, and it's all about quick, collaborative work sprints. And then you have others, like the Smith and Regan model, which just really hammers home this idea that design is this constant process of revision. Okay, so we've talked about blueprints and recipes, linear and iterative models. What does all this mean for you? When it's your turn to build something, how in the world do you choose which approach to take? All right, if you remember one thing from all this, let it be this. The system is a guide, not a cage. It doesn't matter if you're using classic ADDE or some super fast agile approach, the goal isn't to follow the steps like a robot. The real skill is in understanding the principles of good design, and then picking and choosing
tailoring the system to fit your project, your learners, and whatever it is you're trying to achieve.
So, the next time you're tasked with building some kind of learning experience, I want you to pause for a second and think about your blueprint. What's it going to look like? Are you going with a straight, linear, step-by-step plan, or are you going to embrace a more dynamic, iterative cycle of creating and getting feedback? What will your next learning blueprint look like?